I do see that Al raised his hand, so we can start
Yeah,
there.
we're gonna bring Al on. So Al, let me bring you up here real quick. So thank you for raising your hand. I'm gonna add you up real quick. Hello, Al. Welcome.
Guys. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Al. Good to
Thank you
see you.
so much for doing this. I saw it on Facebook and I was like, I gotta join that
Yeah.
Zoom.
Thank
Um,
you.
and it was a pleasure meeting you at the JJ's meetup too. So it was great that I got the opportunity to meet you in person. And I agree with all the stuff you're saying about networking and being intentional about the people that you're meeting and having those conversations that hopefully can lead to partnerships down the road.
Thank you.
Uh, my question is on lending. I'm just curious, can you give us like your top three tips if someone is considering starting a lending business?
It depends on whether you're going to lend your own money or you're going to broker.
Mm.
To me, I started out lending my own. Fortune Builders was big on telling everybody you could be a private lender. And so I started out lending my own cash, which comes with its own pretty steep learning curve as well, because it's your own money and you're on the one hand, you're in control. On the other hand, uh, you got to learn pretty quick. So whether you're lending your own or you're brokering came later. It was an eye-opening experience that I could broker money, and take the deals to somewhere else and just get paid. First, decide what you're going to do. Which is it, right? Are you lending your own money, or are you brokering? And that's number one. Number two, analysis. So I overlay my own analysis onto every single loan I do, whether it's my own money or whether it's brokered money. I don't care. I treat brokered money as my own. And it doesn't matter if it's private money that I'm brokering or whether it's hard money that I'm brokering. It does not matter. I treat it as my own money. I want to protect it. I want to make sure everybody's safe. And by the way, I want to make sure that the borrower is safe as well, right? The only way I can ensure that my money comes back to me is by making sure that my borrower makes a profit. Let me repeat that. The only way I can ensure that my money comes back to me is by making sure that the borrower makes a profit. So every single deal, I run it through my own analyzer in order to make sure that they're going to make a profit. Now, obviously, there's unexpected, things that can happen during a project. I understand that it can crash and burn. I understand all of it. But at least out of the gate, I know that there should have been at least X amount of profit and X amount, percent of return on investment before I even start. Okay. So tips. So you asked for three tips. So the first one was figure out if it's your own money or it's somebody else's. Number two, make sure that you overlay your own analysis. Number three, uh, you don't need, this was a big game changer for me. At first, I was trying to figure out systems to handle 1 million investors doing one deal each. It was a big mind change, a big eye opener for me when a friend of mine, a very experienced investor, Brian Fine, of Coast to Coast, he and I sat down for breakfast one day, and this is about networking, right? Knowing, having people that you can go to with questions. And he and I were having breakfast, and he turns to me and he goes, "So what's the big rub for you right now? Like, what's going on in your business where you could get over it?" And I said, I'm trying to figure out these systems and the processes and how to have processors and loan officers collect all this data. He goes, "Dude, you're killing yourself." He goes, "What's the biggest obstacle you have to overcome?" And I said, "I'm not sure." He goes, "Well, you have to teach an inexperienced new borrower how to go from not knowing you to closing a loan with you in one deal." He goes, "That's the biggest kind of hump you have to overcome." He goes, "Instead, what you should be doing is looking for super borrowers. A few people doing so many deals already knowing you that, at this point, and I do have this, I shifted my entire perspective after that, and I started focusing on having super borrowers. I've got people now who just email me a Google Drive link with the next deal. I don't have to sell them on my service. I don't have to rebuild rapport every single time. They already know, like, and trust me. When I pass through their towns, we have dinner, lunch, breakfast, whatever they're available for. Our kids play together. I don't need to convince them that I'm a good guy. I don't need to convince them that my price is already the best for them. At this point, that part's been handled. It's just working on the new loan. Another loan application if I need it, another appraisal to be done, and we simply close the loan. That shift right there, that's my suggestion for you. Because his question to me was, how much business do you really need? Right? How much money do you need to earn to have a good life? And the question isn't, we're not talking about billions, we're talking about 6 to 7 figures, right? So then the question becomes, how many clients do you need? How many deals do you need them doing to make those 6 to 7 figures? And when you break it down, it suddenly comes into, I came up for myself with what I call the 20 by 20. I just need 20 clients doing 20 deals a year. That's it. So that's tip number 3, that you want to have a good relationship with a few borrowers, a few clients, and just keep it rolling, keep it moving.
That's great. So Al, did that answer your question pretty well?
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you. And yes.
My pleasure.
Awesome, man. Hey, by the way, it's good to see you again, Al. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming in.
I'm here.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next question. I think we got Frank here. Frank, we're gonna bring you up, get your question answered here.
By the way, for those of you that don't realize it, I already know Frank, and we've met each other, spoken to each other, so it's a more cordial. Hey, Frank. Hey, Mark.
So here's my question. Is there a way, and how can we structure to have our private money lenders that we've already established to cover the gap, the liquidity, that 20% of PP payments, holding costs, and then have them in second position on the rehab, and then our hard money lenders in first position? We feel that's our next growth spurt. We don't have 100% private money.
Yep.
We have used hard money.
Yep.
And actually the company that Mark represents, we've done a couple of deals through that company. So we're at the point where, we want to be able to keep the funds we have in our bank account. We want to keep those for marketing and operational cost.
Yep.
But to scale, we're now, we've done the networking thing. We've got people that are coming to us with money and funding, and we have these private money lenders, and we just want to be able to tie them in, not just with the promissory note. I mean, this is how we were kind of taught with Fortune, but also to have to give
them security.
To the deed, because we're common deals, and we're just kind of struggling as to what that would look like, how to do it. Do we need to set something up with an attorney, the accountant, whatever?
All right. Well, I'll give you an in-depth answer to this. So again, you want to talk to an attorney and you want to talk to an accountant about it. At the same time, I'll give you the answer of what I do and how this can be structured. There's different ways. Okay. Way number 1, and I want to say simplest way, but this is your biggest faith and, kind of trust. So, for example, I can borrow from my dad with a promise. Okay, let me back it up a little bit. When you borrow from hard money, typically hard money companies do not allow a second position. They don't want a second position lien behind them. Some do, some don't. There's very few that do, and typically they're a lot more expensive. So you can find a company that will allow a second position lien, okay? But now let's talk about, okay, they don't allow it. What do you do? So number 1, you can borrow money from people with a promissory note and a personal guarantee without a lien. And, if they're okay with that, they're okay with it. My dad does not need a mortgage securing him to the property from me. He'll lend the money to me. He'll lend it to me right in my LLC, and that's it. He wires the money over. I have a promissory note with him so that we can keep track of what we're doing. And I give him a personal guarantee because I want him to feel good about it. Okay. And I want to keep myself, at a certain level. So that's way number 1. So the LLC that's doing the project, you could just have them, lend to it without a lien. That's way number 1. Okay, there's certain, amount of trust that has to come with it. Obviously, we're all honest and we're trying to pay them back, so there's no question there. It's so that's way number one. Way number two, instead of having them lend to your company, you have them partner with you in the company doing the project. Now, whether you guys do it as two people in that LLC or whether you're doing it as your sub LLCs being a partner in the LLC doesn't matter, but you have them partner. You can have them as a minority, 10% member. Now, their money is not coming in as a lien. Their money is coming in as a fellow investor's money. And the security for them, instead of a lien, they are actually part owner of the property now together with you. And it comes with a very interesting benefit. In case something happens to you, if whoever is your money partner was a lien, the first position doesn't really care about them. Not that the first position is bad people, but they just want their money back. So the second lien, so they're going to try to take the property. Let's say something catastrophic happens. I use the example of a killer bus, right? Let's say I'm the guy who's doing the project. I have a second position lien. I step off the curb, after closing on the property. I get killed by a bus. Guess what? The first position lender now is just trying to get rid of the property to get their money back. If the company happens to sell for more money and there's something left over for the second position lien, great. But if not, the second position lien is in the wind and they pretty much have no power. Okay. But on the other hand, if your investor, instead of being a second position lien, is a 10% member of the LLC, well, guess what? That killer bus kills me. I'm dead. Whoever was the money partner now has the ability to operate the LLC. They can take over the project. They can sell the property. They can finish the project. And they can now negotiate with that lender because they're an actual member. They're actually running the project now instead of just being a second lien. So to repeat, you can either borrow from people, into your LLC without a lien, just with a promissory note and a personal guarantee, or you can have them partner with you in the LLC, the one that's doing the project, and they can bring their money in as an investor, as equity, instead of as a lender with a lien. Now, just because they're coming in as equity doesn't mean that they have to get paid as equity. In the operating agreement, which is the contract between you guys, you would specify how everybody gets paid. The loan that I have closing next week, we're coming in as equity for a piece of the project, but it still stipulates in the operating agreement that I will get paid monthly interest payments. I don't get any of the equity. I'm purely there for the money, and then I get paid interest on a monthly basis. And when the property is sold, my principal comes back, I'm gone.
Okay. So do you need a new LLC for every time you partner with a private money lender, or just a change in the operating agreement?
So you just need it depends on where you want them to admit them. Okay. So for example, in my case, Mears Group is my company with my wife. I would never let anybody into it, even for 10%. You're not getting access. So for example, when I have partnered with people, we have created a new LLC for the project. And then my partners LLC and Mears Group are the partners in that project. Now, what you can do is, if you intend to keep doing this, is you can have an LLC where your company is a member, and every time you bring in a new partner, you're changing the operating agreement of this LLC. If you're doing it as a partnership, there's no there's no liens, you can still give them a personal guarantee as well, but there's no promissory note, there's no personal guarantee, there's no lien, because they're actually a member of the LLC doing the project. And the members are it's the operating agreement. That's what's governing the if you look at your LLC has an operating agreement that spells out who the members are, what the contract between them is, how the money gets distributed, how the money gets put in, when you're supposed to get paid, who's managing the LLC, right? Your operating agreement is exactly that. It's the operating agreement for your company. Now, is it costly to change it? No. If you want to go to an attorney to have them help you out, it's going to be a couple of $100. At this point, I have templates that I have drafted over the, over the years and projects I've done, where when I change an operating agreement, depending on what I'm doing, I just make the change. It's between me and the other person. I don't need an attorney involved at all. It's free. The operating agreement does not get seen by anybody except your lender and whoever you're working with.
Yeah, the op agreement essentially is an internal document.
Correct.
You don't need to register that with the Secretary of State every time you're making a change to
No.
it. Right.
Now,
Okay.
here's the kicker. My LLCs are registered in Wyoming. In Wyoming, that other than the articles of organization, you don't get to see anything about my LLC. The
Mhm.
operating agreement is only seen by me, my partners, and whoever I'm borrowing money from, and I have to disclose it to. Okay.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So you don't have to have it registered, certified, notarized. It's an internal
No,
thing.
it's an
Okay.
internal thing. Correct.
Is
Now,
that
in my case, the way I do it typically is when I make changes or I'm signing an operating agreement with someone, I usually do it digitally through, I use Sign Now. I know there's DocuSign, Sign Now. When you're lending in first position, so there's no other lenders, you're just the first position. What does first position and second position and all other positions mean? It means who recorded the lien first, second, third. So when you close on when you're doing a deal, when you're lending, I always go through a title company. The lesson on that cost me $50,000 and about 2 years of my life to learn it. So you always go through a title company and you have them do a title search. Now, if there are no other liens, or essentially you're paying off any other liens in front of you, and you're becoming the first position, it means that you are now recorded as the first and only lien on this property. So that's what a first position lien means. So you go through title, you close on the loan, whoever's borrowing from you borrows the money, the title company disburses it to them after the docs are signed. And then they go and they record the mortgage or the deed, wherever the security document is, they record it at the local county office. And now there is a lien recorded against the property. Okay. So now, how do you make sure you're not wiped out? Well, obviously you want the property to be worth more than what you're lending. So let's say the person is buying the property for 100,000. You want to have them put in what's called the skin in the game. Let's say 10 or 20% is going to be coming from them. That's your cushion, and you're providing, let's say 80 to 90,000. Well, that 10 to 20,000 is your cushion in case you have to foreclose on it, in case there's issues to recoup your money, right? The fees that you're going to pay to liquidate this property. Now, when you do the when you do the renovation, you want to do it in reimbursement instead of advancing it, or instead of advancing. So they're going to do 30,000 in renovation. Guess what? First, they're going to do $10,000. You're going to reimburse them. They're going to do another $10,000. You're going to reimburse them. They're going to do the final $10,000. You're going to reimburse them. You do not advance money for work not completed yet. This was another lesson I learned, and it cost me $30,000 to learn this.
I'm gonna say,
Okay?
I was just gonna say that you probably learned that. That was a hard lesson learned as
That
well.
was a hard lesson to learn, because we advanced the 30,000 renovation. The people we were working with, and it wasn't malice, but they ended up spending it on a different project, expecting that project to finish off, get paid, return the money here, then they would do the rehab here. Well, much like the Merchant of Venice, that project flopped. I mean, they had a series of projects, and that project didn't do as it was supposed to. And now the 30,000 we gave them for this project ended up disappearing. Well, we ended up taking the property back, but guess what? The 30,000 allocated for the rehab that still needed to get done was now gone. And we had to put more money in, finish out the rehab out of pocket. Essentially, the project ended up breaking even, and even we discovered an issue with the septic system, so it ended up being a negative instead of just breaking even.
I was gonna say you'd probably be lucky to break even, right?
No, because the anticipated profit is what got eaten up by an expense we didn't anticipate. So instead of breaking even, it pushed right. That 30,000 that got spent somewhere else, what should have been done, and the profit that should have made us even got eaten up by an issue we didn't anticipate. So we ended up at a slight negative.
Right.
But it was a great learning experience. Okay, so you reimburse for work. Now here's a kicker for all of you, and this is something Fortune Builders mentioned. Do you go to work at McDonald's and tell them on day number one, pay me my week's salary and then I'm going to work?
No.
No? Huh, strange. They first expect you to work for a week and then you get paid a salary, right? Well, why does anybody ever expect it to be different in real estate? Why does a contractor expect you to advance some money before they've done a single thing?
Materials, maybe?
Ah,
Material.
now, great point right there. Materials. Now, you're right. I will pay for material, but the way I do it is I'll pay for it out of pocket. I'm not giving money to my contractor. I'll pay for the material. You tell me what you're buying. You tell me what you need, and I'll pay for the material, but I'm not paying you.
Got it.
Okay. So yes, I will, but at that point, I'm not advancing them for labor. I'm simply covering material, right? If I need to buy kitchen cabinets that they're going to install, I'll pay for the kitchen cabinets and then I'll pay them for installation after they're done installing.
Right.
I reimburse for work.
It's amazing to me how many people have made that mistake where they've advanced their contractor money and the contractor then subcontracts to someone else or just takes off, basically.
Yep, correct.
Okay, we've got another question. I'm going to bring this person up. This is my partner, Mark. Mark, thank you for being on. I'm going to bring you up here real quick.
To the question, one of the biggest things right now is I get a lot of people that come up and ask for funding because they're exactly that problem of not being able to finish their project because they've already, not accounted for the oh shit factor in their underwriting, right?
Yep.
And they're over leveraged and they're in a position where they're roughs, but they're still kind of that attitude of not trying to share so much or not trying to be transparent about the problem they're in. When something that comes up, what is your thought process on how to analyze a situation like that? I mean, for me, it would be a conversation of what you talked about, which is the story of who, what, when, where, what's going on before we even do any type of underwriting, because that takes time and effort. When that comes to you, what has been your best experience of how to vet those opportunities quicker in a good way, so you're not too harsh?
Okay. First thing, and the first thing I want you guys to keep in mind is not my problem. I don't owe them a solution. Okay. It sounds harsh, but I want you to understand this. I understand this position, right? Somebody comes to you with an opportunity, you don't have to take it. And you don't owe them taking it either, unless you actually signed a contract and obviously, yada, yada, yada. But somebody comes to you and goes, Mark, I need your help. First of all, you don't owe them that help. Okay. You don't have to. Okay. So that's number one. So now removing that emotional charge of, oh my God, I have to help. Nope. Now let's look at it coolly and calmly. You said it. What is the story? Now I have done loans. I've done, third position, whatever, second, third position where somebody went over budget, but I needed to understand what happened. And if somebody honestly tells me, like, listen, we didn't anticipate it. We ended up having to, we opened up a wall. There was more termite damage than we anticipated. And we had to do some extra framing to the tune of whatever, $10,000, $15,000. But now that $10,000, $15,000 is what we're short to put in the windows. Okay. Well, what was your project worth to begin with? Who are you? How do I know you? Right? Just simple, basic questions. I have a client. He came to me for some funds. He's got a multifamily building where 3 of the units he wants to do upgrades and renovations, better turnovers so that he can increase the rent and, get them tenanted up and then potentially pull out money. Right. And the conversation he and I had was, well, first of all, what are you doing? What happened? And by the way, how are you doing the takeout? And he, of course, turned around and said the magic words, well, you're going to be doing it for me. So, okay, I'm in control of how he's getting the money later to repay my money, right? Number 2, in this case, it's somebody I know well. I've done multiple projects with. So guess what? I trust them a little bit more. I can secure against other properties and things like that. So now, right? But the conversation was the same one. I'm going to do reimbursement draws. I'm not advancing you anything. You're going to have to do work and I'll reimburse you as you're doing it. So you find out the story, right? In his case, that building is worth significantly more. There's definitely a lot of money. I made a call to the company or the credit union we're going to be doing the takeout loan with. And the credit union rep told me, oh, not even a problem. He's like, we don't even have to do a full refi. We could do a second position behind our own first. So once I started putting that information together of, okay, I understand why he's needing this money right now to help fix it up. And I know how I'm going to get my money back on the back end. It's a beautiful place, right? So now I feel good about doing, the deal with him. And like I said, I've done multiple deals with him. If that's kind of, you're right about the story. So first off, you want to understand. So, and by the way, the number also matters. Are they coming to you for 100,000 or are they coming to you for 5? Did they get short a little bit? Are they short a lot? Did they really make a mistake? Or was it just like, oh crap, the economy has been all over the place and material, listen, labor went up at one point in 2021, labor was 40% year over year. Lumber, sorry, it was 40%. I understand somebody getting caught out there like that. But the counterbalance to it is, what is the property going to be worth? How are they going to repay you? So you want to understand why they're short. You want to understand, what are they short? Why are they short? How are you getting it paid back?
That's great. I wanted to ask this question because I have some people here that sometimes when I'm trying to let people know, it's not a no, it's not a yes. We are at it. You're asking me for a decision before discovery, right? And I don't know anything, right? And so I got on a call yesterday and I entertained it with somebody who's doing a lot of lead generation for us. Like, I got a great friend. He needs money. I used to work for him. How do I get him the money? And I said, well, let me have a conversation with him first. And I want you to be on the call. The very first part of the call was, I need $100,000. What interest rate do you want? Like, I don't know anything. I don't have a property. I'm not Santa Claus. I'm not just giving away money, right? He goes, do you not have the money? I said, I have 100% of any money that you need for good projects. And I have no money for projects that are going to waste my time and energy, right? So before we do anything, I don't need all the stuff, but if I'm a lender and not a buyer, can I at least analyze what where it's located and where the value is, right? How deep are you in so far? Because like you just suggested, you just said, $100,000 mistake is not a $20,000 oh shit, right? So if this is what's happening now and you don't have money, what have you tried already that didn't work, that me and you are in a conversation, and how am I secured when oh shit happens again? Right?
Precisely.
So yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you for doing this, Mark.
My pleasure.
So what I was going to say, Mark, to that, I really liked how the other Mark basically said, you want to look at it dispassionately. You don't owe them anything, and you want to take a step back and you want to view it from a place where you're not emotional about it. You can look at the numbers, you can look at the problems that they've had, and just kind of take it from. I like how he kind of brought that up. Was just like, you don't owe them anything. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the project. Like, the fact that you have this person coming in saying, hey, I think I know what you're talking about, but I might not. But anyway, you coming in saying, look, give me $100,000. What's your interest rate? It's like, well, whoa, what hold on a second.
Exactly.
Right? You don't even know anything about the actual property yet. Why are you, and by the way, are you behind $100,000? Is this a brand new project? It's like, what's going on with this? So I like the fact that, you really do gotta take a step back. So, and Mark, do you find that happening a lot? Do you find, like, when, people are coming to you, asking you for funding, do you find that, like, they don't have all their ducks in a row?
Yeah, majority of the time, right? So, we've had experience too with people even joining on my sales teams that have gotten into certain issues, right? And the biggest thing that even for me to discover sometimes is, how far behind, besides even first position, second position, how many loans are out there that are maybe not even documented, right? Who's coming out of the woodworks on this? And, you know, one of the biggest things is like, I it's a red flag for me when I hear, oh, cool, Mark, you have access to capital. Don't worry, Mark will take care of it. He's fine. You know, and I think
just
that
magically
go,
Mark is
wow.
going to take care of it. Yeah, magically Mark is just going to throw his money at your problem without even knowing anything about it, right?
Yeah, well, not even just the money, it's the relationships, right?
Yeah,
Some of it's like, hey, you have a PML. How do I use your PML? And my response is, if you have a significant other, like a wife or a husband, I go, how do I go into your wife and husband's bank account and take all her money? And how does that process work?
That's a good analogy. That's a good analogy.
Right?
Because that's essentially what's happening. Someone's asking you for your contacts without no relationship established, just coming in immediately asking for those contacts or asking for that financing or whatever, without even providing any kind of, there's no relationship, there's no information. So anyway, what I was saying to Mark Chang is Mark, is I like how you brought up, you don't owe them anything, and you should be looking at each thing dispassionately. You should be looking at the numbers, listening to the story, most importantly the story, right? And being smart about it, right? You don't need to jump into anything. You don't owe them anything, right? So I really like that.
I look at it like this. I would say 80% of it in the sale or the sales conversation is relational, but I close with facts and data, right? We're not going to close it. And most people are worrying about the 20% of the close when I don't have 80% of the relationship or the story. And how am I supposed to assess that? So when it comes in very blunt of like, well, oh, you don't want to give me money. I go, you haven't given me anything for me to be able to even answer that correctly. So if you need that answer in 10 seconds, the answer quickly in one is no. And I love that it's recorded because I want to share this with other people whenever this comes. It's like, it's not me that I don't want to give this to you. But when you go to any type of relationship and borrow money, how are you securing that person? How are you making sure that that person's livelihood is in a good position and protected? People who have accumulated some type of liquidity, and if they're older, they don't have the time to recoup that, right? So if you're younger and you're like 18, 19 or whatever age, you have some time to maybe, okay, shit happened. Okay, I'm figuring this out. And even with you, what you just shared too, Mark, was that you knew everything until you got that $30,000 oh shit, $50,000 oh shit.
Of course.
Right? And, you know, when people go, well, no, I got it figured out. If you got it figured out, you probably wouldn't be coming to me for money. Okay? So let's start with there. And if this is where it's at right now, how can you guarantee me with something else you don't know? If they're not lending you any more money, how am I going to make sure that I recoup my capital for my people? And that's my relationship, my brand, and my name that I'm jeopardizing. It's not just a dollar amount, right? So,
Mark and I have a very intimate experience with somebody that was actually on our on a team that we were on, get into trouble, and we kind of watched it happen, and it was definitely a learning experience, but it can happen really quickly. And you can see how those relationships, those bridges are burned, and those relationships are burned when you're not, I don't want to say careless, but when you're going in and trying to, for example, throw good money after bad is an example for that kind of. And you know, it happens really fast, and nobody ever goes in with the expectation of that's what's going to happen, or nobody goes in wanting to do that and wanting to have that happen, but it does happen, and it happens really fast. And so understanding the story is probably one of the best things I've heard you say, and something without that emotion, right? And just looking at the numbers and listening to the story is really, really good. Mark, did that answer your question pretty well?
Oh, 100%. And I just wanted to poke in and just say what's up to you guys.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's going well, David. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I don't know if you remember me. We met
I
at
do.
Venice,
I told you to
right?
go network and find your private lenders and capital at the networking event. Yes, I do remember very well.
Right, right. So I found two private money lenders, just networking and things like that. And so I wanted to know, okay, because I'm basically looking at deals right now from like places like New Western and Fair Trade and things of that nature. But like
Okay.
I wanted to know, how do I basically make sure that the data that I'm looking at is precise?
So let's simplify it down a little bit, and let's take it to what I call the big boys do. So as I operate and I lend my money, I look at what the bigger companies do and why they do what they do. Okay, that's a very important thing. So for example, when I lend my money, and people will ask me, right, Mark, are you a private lender or are you a hard money lender? My response is I'm a lender. Okay. Although I personally make the distinction that to me, a private lender is somebody that knows that right? They're personal to you. Kind of like my dad. My dad is my private lender, right? And as Justin was mentioning just now, right? And Mark, right? How do you expect me to open up my Rolodex and just give you my lenders, right? If somebody called up my dad and said, Mr. Abramovich, can I borrow 100,000? He would laugh and go, who are you and why are you calling me? Okay. So
Right.
so that's number one. So now, how do I lend? I lend what I call hard money style, meaning I'm still going to do a credit check, background check. I'm still going to request an appraisal of the property that I'm lending on, even if it's my own cash. Okay. So now the question becomes, how do you protect your private lenders? The exact same way. You're going to do an appraisal of the property. So when you're dealing with these wholesalers and they're offering you a deal, the numbers don't change, right? You're going to BRRRR the property. So again, for those listening in, BRRRR is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, right? So you buy a property, you fix it up, get somebody in there, refinance to pull out the cash, and then repeat the process as many times as you can. So you're going to buy a property and you're going to renovate it and you're going to refinance it. Great. When you're buying that property, you're going to do an appraisal. You're going to do an inspection. You're going to do an appraisal. That's number one. Number two, in order to do the renovation and make sure that that's the renovation that needs to be done, you're experienced enough to walk through and know what needs to be done, or you're going to take an inspector and a contractor with you to walk the property and determine what actually needs to get done. Then you're going to take all of those numbers and you're going to put them, listen, what's the property worth when it's done? Well, you're going to ask, either how to comp a property yourself, or you're going to ask a realtor to generate a CMA for you. So now you take the information, right? And then you take all of that information, you plug it into an analyzer or an underwriter or whatever spreadsheet you use, you're going to plug the numbers in. And now if you know that the property is worth this much and it's going to cost you this much to renovate it, that tells you how much you should be buying it for. Right? There's no magic to this. It's just math. It's just numbers on a page. There's no emotion to it. If the property is worth $400,000 when you're done renovating it, and you have to spend a certain amount of dollars to renovate it, and your cost of money is a certain number, and the realtor fees are another number, then guess what? That just tells you how much you have to buy the property for. If the wholesaler is selling it to you for that price, great. If they're asking too much, you negotiate your walk away.
Yeah, I guess I would ask too. I would ask David, have you underwritten the property that you're trying to acquire funding for?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay.
So that's step number one.
What are you in any mentorships? Are you in sub 2, for example?
Yeah, I'm in sub 2.
So just so you know, there's a whole underwriting certification that's going on right now, and there are a lot of people involved with that. So if you're looking for someone to help you underwrite, help you get more accurate numbers, there are people in sub 2 that you can reach out to. You can actually post, if you're specifically looking for underwriting help, I would recommend posting in sub 2, need underwriting help. I guarantee you're going to get some responses from that. Now, obviously, keep in mind those people are probably going to want to have some kind of JV agreement, right, for the work that they're doing. Whether they're going to get paid up front or they're going to have some kind of, but that's to be expected, right? I mean, they're doing
Right.
some work for you. But if you bring someone in like that, learn from them. So look at what they're doing, kind of watch what they're doing. How maybe make it part of the situation is like, I'd really like to understand more about how you're doing this. Maybe part of the deal is like, I'd be glad to JV with you, but can I also maybe shadow you a little bit and see what you're doing? Right. Most people are not going to have a problem with that. Right. But yeah, definitely you want to get that underwritten so you know your numbers.
I don't know. I don't want to like seem like a newbie and ask something like, oh, do you think this is a good deal, or like you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. All right.
you get
So hold on. First question I have is, who don't you want to ask that question? Is this a good deal? Who don't you want to ask?
the lender, the private
The
money lender.
lender? Okay. So wait, you said the private money lender?
Yeah, the private money
All right.
lender.
Now here's the problem. The private money lender you're talking to might not have any more experience than you do. Think about what a private, there's that word, private money lender means. So I told you guys about talking to the deli owner, and I told you about talking to my dentist. How much experience do you think they have on lending, analyzing deals, or real estate? What would you
Not
assume?
Not much.
Not much. I'm not asking them. I have to be the expert, which means you as the investor have to be the expert. You understand? This is where you have to be the expert, not your private money. Now, on the other hand, if you come to somebody like me who's a professional lender, let's just say hard money, right? If you come to someone like me, there's absolutely no problem asking me. In fact, I'll tell you another thing. Don't try to pretend you know more than you do. Be honest with people. If you don't have a lot of experience, this is going to be your first deal, be upfront about it and ask for help. If you come to a lender and you say, hey, this is my first deal, because I'm going to ask you what your experience is anyway. It's right on my deal form. Okay. That question is going to be one of the items you have to fill out in order to submit your deal. What's your experience? And I'm going to see that 0. And me seeing that 0 is not going to mean that I'm not going to do business with you. It's just going to mean that I have to look at the numbers a little bit more carefully. It's going to mean that, we're going to ask for certain documentation, right? It's going to mean, for example, for people with 0 experience on rental loans, we ask for who their manager is going to be, that they have to have the property professionally managed if they don't have 2 years of management experience. Okay. So you can self-manage if you have 2 years of self-management experience. And if you don't, you have to have a contract with a professional manager. Not a big deal, but it's just a slight twist on whether you have experience or you don't. Okay. So now, me personally, I can detect when somebody has experience or doesn't. If they're trying to pretend and kind of like listen, Fortune Builders, and I'm sure Sub 2 gives you lessons on how to have credibility. But I can spot it. I know what's real and I know what's not. I know who's done deals and I know who hasn't. And when somebody who hasn't done a deal, right, is trying to pretend that they have, and they're trying to like basically pull one over on me, it just sets, it gives me kind of pause, right? On the other hand, when somebody who has no experience is very much upfront about it and says, listen, do you do business with beginners? Sure, we do. Hey, I'm a beginner. Can you help me out? Not a problem. Hey, can you look over my deal? Absolutely. I automatically do, because I want to make sure that they succeed. But I'm just saying, if you come to a professional lender and you're telling them you're a beginner and you ask them to look over your deal, if they have anything other than empathy, sympathy, and anything other than that, you shouldn't be working with them.
Let's kind of reiterate that. If these are people that aren't going to understand that you're new and you're trying to learn and this is your first time and they've got some kind of major problem with that, move on. There's plenty other lenders where that came from,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Anyway, David, I hope we helped answer your question a little bit. Was that all right, or do you need some additional guidance? If you do, I would say this: let's connect after the call. Let's connect and let's have a conversation, because there's a lot of resources, especially if you're in Sub 2. There's a lot of resources for this, to get your question really thoroughly answered.
You can find me on www.mearsgroupllc.com. Mears is spelled M as in Mark, I as in Inga, R as in Robert, S as in Sebastian, Group, GROUP, LLC.com. And you can find me there, my email, my phone number, schedule a call with me if you need it. I mean, I'm around, right?
All right, we're gonna bring Dennis up here. Dennis has got his hand up. It looks like Dennis is gonna be our last question. So bring you up, Dennis. Dennis, hello, sir.
Thanks a lot for all the great information. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to see you again, Dennis.
Yeah, we met over at JJ's party. Did you ever get any more information on pad split?
I looked into it in terms of what it offers. Mostly my wife started looking into it since she's the property manager, not me.
Okay.
Our biggest thing, so from our perspective, we're not well, okay, from our perspective, when we manage properties, it's a lot more difficult to handle by the rooming house kind of scenarios. I understand that pad split, I think, does it for you.
Right.
So I still need to investigate it more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, pad split has become a very, very popular thing. And it's one of those things where you just like with Airbnb, there's benefits and there's drawbacks to pad split. I know the initial upfront investment for pad split, it's maybe not quite as much as like an Airbnb type thing, but for example, every bedroom, anything you're going to label a bedroom has to have a window. I think, I don't know if that's true in every state, but I think in most states that's probably the case, right? So you're divvying up the different rooms. You can get multiple beds in a room or whatever, but you're divvying up those rooms, like they all have to have windows, and it can get complicated from what I've heard anyway. Like I haven't done any pad split stuff, but I've heard it can get a little tricky. So
yeah, I've looked into it extensively, and I just put an offer today in on one. And yeah, basically converting the living room, the dining room, the garage into additional bedrooms. Pad split does do the complete personnel management part of it. So it's totally hands off for us as far as that goes. We just collect a check on that part of it. And then which is nice because they've got all the contracts. They're used to handling the disputes between the tenants. If someone wants to move because they're not getting along with the other people, or they're just, the people say, this guy's a jerk, we want him out of here.
yeah.
I do have one question for you.
Sure.
And how are you financing it? Because from my perspective and the hard money, the financing companies I work with for long-term financing, they wouldn't do this. They're not going to finance short-term or mid-term, basically by the room housing. Most do not. So how are you financing this purchase?
Pad split has 2 lenders that will do it.
Okay.
Well, actually, they used to have 2. One's kind of on hold right now, which is unfortunate because I already did a loan with him. Okay. And then I've talked to another fellow that says they're going to also do it. So the one caveat that the first company that backed out had was, doing the burst strategy on it, trying to pull the money back out. Now you have a non-conforming property. You've got, instead of 3 bedrooms, a living room, dining room, you've got 6 or 7 bedrooms and no living room, dining room. Hey, I can show you how this thing makes great money. Look at this. I'm buying a property for $300 and I'm pulling $4,800 a month out of it. It's great money, but the bank looks at it and says, if we have to foreclose,
correct.
Now we've got to turn it back into a conventional property, and so they're not doing that.
It's got to be permitted, right? It's got to pass permit standards, right? Something like that.
Even that doesn't matter. As far as the banks are concerned, I mean, you can permit the yin. You really don't need much in permitting unless you're doing electrical. If you're putting in electrical, I mean, you can put all the walls in you want to, without permits, move walls around.
Yep.
But as far, I'm saying from the far as the bank's perspective, like when they take the house back over and you've got all those walls up and all this stuff, right? And the house is now all broken up. They've got to bring it back to the normal specifications, right?
Right, which is why most of the banks aren't interested in refining that money out.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So you can get into it, but that's the big question, is getting the money back out of it. And there's a couple of people that say they will, and that's why I want to talk to Mark about it, see if he's looked into it, if he'd be interested in it, but obviously not yet.
Hard money. Well, I can tell you this. I mean, I am interested in, I'm curious about it as an investor, but as a lending, like a prospect for loans, I simply don't have a outlet for it. You know, the companies that I work with just wouldn't do this. They're looking more, you know, they're more kind of vanilla in the sense of, hey, we want a rental property, we want a regular, a regular long-term tenant in it, and we just want a smooth ride getting paid. The one that's a little more aggressive, even if they'll do the short-term stuff, again, it's a regular house with regular bedrooms where they're, you might have a lease with or with a sublet situation, but again, modifying a property to be non-conforming, like a lot of lenders, for example, for condos, right? A lot of lenders that do condos, they'll still ask for a condo questionnaire to determine if the condo is warrantable or not. And for those of you who don't know, a warrantable versus non-warrantable condo is just how easy is it to get a regular mortgage on it. And so lenders will, even though they're not banks, will still kind of follow what will a bank do on this. And they'll look at warrantable or not. And if it's non-warrantable, they may not do the loan, or they'll, let's say, reduce LTV significantly. So it's the same thing here, right? Now Dennis, you mentioned it. It's a non-warrantable, right? Non-conforming property, which is where, a lot of companies are like, I'd rather not deal with it. There's enough regular properties. I don't need this. So
there's enough additional cost if we have to foreclose on just a regular property. Why would I add additional cost to
right?
Well, okay. I apologize, Dennis, and we didn't get the question fully answered, but I hope we were of some help.
Well, the question was fully answered. It just wasn't what I wanted.
No, it wasn't what you wanted. Right? All right, guys. I think that's we've come to the end of our meeting today, of our Zoom call. Mark, this was amazing. This was really, really, really helpful. I know it helped me and helped a lot. Everybody who came here got some gold nuggets from you today, so I really appreciate you. Real quick, remind everybody where they can get a hold of you, how they can contact you.
My company is Mears Group. And you can find us online at www.mearsgroupllc.com. That's M as in Mark, I as in Inga, R as in Robert, S as in Sebastian, Group, GROUP, LLC.com. Whether you need to find have a quote for a property, whether it's a fix and flip or a rental property, or if you just need to contact me, a mortgage in Florida, reach out to us. By the way, we also do work with a credit repair company. So there is a link on our site for credit repair. Credit scores are an important thing for loans. I mean, you guys know this. I don't have to preach it about, whether it's for a car loan, whether it's a home, whether it's an investment property. Lenders look at your credit scores. And again, much like raising capital, you want to do it well in advance as opposed to scrambling the night before. So there is a credit repair company there, and they will actually do it for you. It's not a do it yourself. We're going to tell you where to send a letter. They'll actually take care of it. And so find us online.
Awesome, Mark. Well, thank you again. And I just want to reiterate something, guys. I'm sitting in for JJ today. So thank you guys all for having me today. It was a real pleasure. I'm really honored that JJ would have me on to host another one of his Zoom meetings. But I just want to remind you guys, for those of you who haven't already gone to JJ's site to register, go to jjazizian.com, go to the homepage, register, get in here, register, be a part of the Facebook group, get your name out there. Remember, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And once again, guys, thank you all for being here. And on behalf of Mark and myself, thank you and come back again. We'll see you soon.